So I want to welcome you all back. Again, I'm Rebecca Snyder with the Executive Director of the MDDC Press Association. Right now, we have this amazing combined session. So MDDC's internship program covers Maryland, Delaware, and DC. It's supported with funding from the Nutting Family Foundation, the Delaplane Foundation, and Delaware Humanities. And we've provided technical expertise this spring to the Delaware Community Foundation, which has their very own internship program specifically for Delaware newsrooms. So several of their students will be at MDDC Newsroom. So you will see some familiar faces as you go about your world. We have created a Slack workspace for the internship programs. So I've put that invitation in the chat. If you have not joined our Slack workspace, please do so. It's a great way for you guys to connect with one another. And with that, actually, I want to introduce Larry Nagengast of the Delaware Community Foundations. He's the mentor of that program. Just wanted to do a little shout out. So Larry, you want to mention something about the program?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Larry Nagengast, as Rebecca mentioned. I will be the mentor for the Delaware Community Foundation portion of the program. And this is going to be an 8-week internship. Our 5 interns will be working at 5 different media outlets in Delaware. And it's kind of a shared operation here in the sense that these 5 interns will be working for those publications, and at the same time, they will be working on a project that I will be guiding, which is to look at the impact of COVID-19 on the Hispanic, the Latino population in Sussex County, Delaware. So it's going to be quite interesting. I'm hoping that when we're done, we will have a 5 or 6 part series that all of our partnering publications will be able to share towards the end of August, that each of you will have contributed to. And I'm looking to have a great deal of fun and some gratification out of this project, and being able to help all 5 of you as you move through and improve your work as journalists throughout the summer.
Great, thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Tom Linthicum, who's the board president of the MDDC Foundation. And he will introduce our panel. And maybe would it be helpful to go around and just introduce all our interns as well?
I think it would. We'll do like a speed rush through all of the interns.
I will leave it in your capable hands.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. I am Tom Linthicum, and I'm president of the Board of Trustees of the Maryland, Delaware, DC Press Association Foundation. And who are they, you might ask? We're the people who raise the money from those foundations and other sources to put on this program and pay your salaries. And then we are also responsible for the training piece of the program. So this is our work. This is who we are and what we do. And we're delighted to see a new crop of interns going through this expanded program this year, reaching parts of Delaware that we have not reached before. So that's who we are. And thanks very much for being here. Now, I'm just going to go through some of you know some of you. I don't think any of you knows all of you, and some of you don't know hardly any of you. So we're going to do a speed rush through the interns, and I will, just as you're pictured here on my screen, I'll call out your name, and if you would then introduce yourself in terms of your name and where you're going to college and where you will be working this summer. So, Catherine, congratulations, you're first.
My name is Catherine Hogan. I'm a student at the University of Delaware. I'm going to be a junior, and I'm working with the Cape Gazette in Lewis this summer.
Excellent, thank you. Kayla.
Hello, my name is Kayla Williams, and I'll be graduating from the University of Delaware this Friday, actually, and I'll be working with Delaware Public Media.
Terrific. Congratulations. Thank you for being here. Ellie.
Hello, my name is Ellie Heffernan, And I was a former intern last summer at the Daily Record in Baltimore, and I'm currently attending UNC Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina.
Thanks, Ellie. And she's one of the people you'll be hearing more from shortly on the panel. And next I have Anjali.
Hi, everyone. I'm also a panelist. I'm Anjali. I use she, her pronouns. I just graduated from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And last summer, I was the editorial intern at the Baltimore Sun, and I'm so excited to get to know you all a little bit better.
Thanks. Thanks for being here. All right. Who's coming up next? You just heard from Larry. Lindsay, how are you, kid?
Hi, everyone. I'm good. And I'm Lindsay. I just graduated from Macalester College on May 15th. I was a former intern last summer at Delaware Online through the foundation. And this summer, I'll be an intern with the Pennsylvania Legislative Correspondence Association.
Great, thanks. And more from Lindsay later on the panel. Okay, so this brings us to Crystal.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Griffin. I will also be graduating from the University of Delaware this weekend. And this summer, I will be interning with the News Journal in Wilmington, Delaware.
Thank you, Crystal. Clara.
Hello, everybody. I'm Clara Neal. I'm a rising senior at the University of Maryland, and I will be interning at the Frederick News Post this summer.
Great, thanks. Eric.
I'm Eric. I'm a rising junior at the University of Maryland, and I'm going to be interning at the Daily Record this summer.
Very good. Hope.
Hi, I'm Hope Khan. I am a junior at the University of Maryland, and I will be interning at the Capital Gazette this summer.
Okay, next round. Is it Isha? Is that the way you pronounce it?
Yeah, yes, it is. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Isha. I'm a rising junior at the University of Delaware, and I will be with Delaware State News this summer.
Great, thanks. Johnny.
Hi everyone, my name is Johnny Perez-Gonzalez. I'm a rising senior at the University of Delaware. I will be interning with WHYY.
Excellent, thank you. And Z.
Hi, I'm Z Moore. I am a rising junior, and I'll be interning with the Cape Gazette.
Great, thank you. Who do we still have? We have Caden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caden Steele. I'm a rising junior at Temple University, and I'll be interning with the Coastal Point this summer.
Thank you, sir. Alexis.
Hello, my name is Alexis Atherley. I'm a recent graduate of Delaware State University, and I'll be interning with Coastal Point.
Thank you. Who's next? This Daquan, is that correct?
Yes, you can call me Doc for short. So how you doing? My name is Doc. I graduated from Delaware State University. This year I'll be interning with the Delaware News Journal.
And you appear to be a fan of the 76ers. Would that be a correct observation?
Yeah, I'm a diehard fan, but I got this shirt because I worked with them two summers ago.
Ah, good. Very good for you. Always leave with some swag. Take that philosophy into your internships too. Where's the swag? Maria. Hello, Maria? Can you hear us?
Oh, sorry. My Wi-Fi is very bad right at the University of Southern California. And I will be interning at the Baltimore Sun this summer.
Great, thank you. All right, that seems to be everybody.
Except for Kayla. So Kayla, did you introduce yourself?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Then I totally was asleep at the wheel. I'm sorry.
No napping during the introduction.
Exactly. I'm going to spotlight our panel, okay?
Now we also have Mike Feeley. Where are you, Mike?
Right here.
Why doesn't my screen tell me you're here, Mike? How am I supposed to know these things? Anyway, Mike is here, and thanks very much for being here with the group, Mike. Mike's the executive editor of the News Journal in Wilmington. So we're going to run through the, this is about lessons learned. This is people who live. Did we skip you in the intros?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, don't let me get away with that, but there you are. So tell everybody who you are and why you're here.
All right, well, hi, I'm Olivia Montez. I'm a rising junior at Washington College, and I'll be interning at Delaware State News this summer.
Excellent. All right, I'll say again, anyone else unaccounted for, missing in action? All right, I think that does it. So back to the panel. The idea here is lessons learned. What were some of the most valuable things that the last year's interns did? The three student panelists were all interns in this program last year, and they all served to some of the newspapers that you're going to. So a year ago, they were sitting right where you are now, wondering, what have I got myself into? How's this going to work? What should I do? And so they're going to share with you their key learnings about that, and then we'll leave time for questions at the end. So we're going to run through the interns first, the former interns, Anjali, Ellie, and Lindsay, and then Mike, if you'll bat cleanup and pull it all together, and then we'll leave time for questions at the end. And we're asking each of the interns to talk for about 5 minutes to share with you their best learning. So we're going to start with Anjali.
Hi, everyone. Like Tom said, I'm Anjali. So I was in the editorial department at the Baltimore Sun. And so I want you all to take my advice with a grain of salt, given that I was in opinions. So if I start talking about opinions, don't do that in the newsroom, which I'm sure you already know. But essentially, I'm going to run through some of the things that I learned when I was an intern. And so jumping right in, talking about pitching. And so some of my biggest advice is just paying attention to the world around you. So that means paying attention to local news and national news and connecting that to what you could be covering in your own community. So being quick on your feet and ready to learn, and showing your editors that you're engaged and alert. So if that means having a bunch of coffee beforehand, like it does for me, then definitely do that. You want to be awake and ready to learn from what they have to say. My second piece of advice is actually going to Twitter. So if you're following the right local leaders on Twitter, you can really stay engaged with your community. And so I know some of you are going to be working remotely. Working remotely can be really tough at times, but you can still stay engaged with the staff and with the people in your community. Reading other local area news is helpful, giving credit where credit is due. So I was at the Baltimore Sun, so I read the Baltimore Sun, Washington Post, also the Baltimore Brew and the Baltimore Beat. So getting to know the other local outlets around you can be really helpful. When it comes to working in the newsroom virtually, it's tough. It's not that easy. And I'm sure Ellie and Lindsay will also discuss how it feels to work virtually. At the Baltimore Sun, we had something called the coffee train, where in the mornings we would all just sit on Zoom, have a cup of coffee, talk in a really casual manner. And it was mostly other journalists and no editors. And that's a great way to just get to know the other journalists. So when you're in the newsroom, you can actually have a cup of coffee with someone and it's a little different, but getting to know them in a more casual manner and getting to know the people that you might have admired for some time. And that brings me to my next point, which is reading your editor's stories beforehand. So if you feel like, if you know who your editor is already, get started reading the newspaper if you haven't already. So read their stories, read the other journalist stories, get to know the paper inside and out. You're going to be a part of it. You're going to be a representative. And when you're working there, you want to be really thorough. There's really no space for error. And so you want to make sure that you're really on top of understanding all the ins and outs of the paper as much as you can before you start. And then my last point is about self-auditing your coverage. And so I mentioned at the beginning of the call that I'll be at Brown University working in American Studies with a focus on journalism and equity. And so one of the big responsibilities we have, and you guys are interns, and if you choose to go into the industry, you'll be representatives of a community. And so remembering who you're serving and auditing your coverage that way. And one of the great things about working in editorial I found was that I was editing the reader's response section, which is the letters to the editor. And so I was looking at exactly who was engaged with the paper, and that gave me a really good idea. And you can read the letters to the editor. You don't have to be editing them to be reading them. paying attention to who's engaged with the paper. And so if you're noticing that there are only people from, for instance, Roland Park who are writing into the newspaper, considering how you can be better serving your community, and always keeping that as the forefront of your mind. You know, you want to be effective and you want to be fast, but you also want to make sure that the coverage that you're putting forth is really serving the community. Yes, so I think that was, I just sped right through all of my points, but I'm really excited to hear your questions. And this is a really exciting time. And I remember how I felt sitting on the other side of this. You're gonna have a great summer, and just make sure you stay engaged and alert. And that's my best piece of advice for you guys.
Anjali, thank you very much. Great ideas all around. And I will reinforce everything you said, but with particular attention to reading your own newspaper. Because there's few things more embarrassing, particularly for an intern, to be called over to the desk first thing in the morning and say, Tom, I want you to go out and cover and do a follow story on that big fire or the overnight traffic accident, whatever. And if I'm giving my editor the 1,000-yard stare, it's pretty clear I don't know what the heck he or she is talking about, because I haven't looked at my own news publication yet. So be absolutely sure to do that. Okay, we'll go to Ellie Heffernan.
Great. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing good this afternoon. I almost said morning. It's not morning anymore. But so I had mentioned previously, I interned at the Daily Record last summer. And this summer, I'm interning at Indie Week, which is a publication in North Carolina, in Durham, if y'all know where Durham is. I'm in Durham right now. But advice for y'all, I think I would start with kind of the more technical stuff. So just in terms of finding sources, I'm sure that some of you might already know this, but like if I'm writing a pretty niche story and I can't think of where to find sources for that, I do use social media a lot, like Facebook groups for the area. Like here at UNC, I'll use like Chapel Hill Carborough neighbors or like UNC students, but you would be surprised how much stuff there is, like whatever county you're in, whatever city you're in, there's like Baltimore County, like neighbors and friends. And you would be surprised you could post the most random thing in there. Like, does anybody have a cousin who works at a donut shop and is also left-handed? And probably somebody will respond. So stuff like that. I would also recommend keeping a really organized either list or spreadsheet of your sources. I kept it on a Word document, but I organized it by topic. And I'm not a very organized person. I did that anyway. So that way, if you have another story, even if the people you find are not applicable to that story, if they work generally in a similar field, they might know someone. Like, for example, like I did a story, I had to interview a public health professor at Johns Hopkins, and maybe she knows a professor who does something else kind of STEM related, and she could put you in contact with someone, and that would be helpful. So other than that, I feel like that's my main technical advice, because I feel like that's the most complicated thing that always stresses me out, is like finding sources. But other than that, most of my advice is related to you guys and your relationship with the internship that you're going to be having this summer. I would just recommend that you really take initiative and try things that interest you, but you might not be super good at. Like, I like photojournalism. It's not my main thing. I didn't get a chance to do it as much at the Daily Record just because there wasn't a lot of in-person coverage with COVID, but I've tried to do that with my other opportunities. So like if something interests you and you know it's not your strong suit, like tell your editor that, but be like, hey, I'd like to try it. If you give me a chance to try it, I would love to do that. And definitely don't be afraid to pitch stuff is what I would say. I think pitching can be really daunting, but nobody's gonna like laugh you out of the room if you have like a bad pitch. Like, you know, even if it's not formed, you can be like, hey, this is kind of a half-formed idea, but I'd like to work through it. And if pitching doesn't come super naturally to you, kind of along what Anjali was saying, like I would just pay attention to the world around you. Or another good way to come up with pitch ideas is just to think of something that bothers you or that you're curious about. That's probably like where most of my best stories that I have pitched have come from, like just paying attention. Like I was walking down the street in Chapel Hill and I saw that there were way more people without housing. I was like, where did all these people come from? Like, has the rate of homelessness gone up in the area? And then I did a story on that. And I mean, in a similar vein, I think kind of like Anjali was saying, make sure that you are catering to as much of your neighborhood or population as you can. I think journalists can definitely get into a position where, I don't know, this like status of catering almost like to elite people and like not to certain communities in the area. So like try to reach out to like leaders in those communities, even if you don't have contacts in those communities yourself, like, nonprofits that work with certain groups. Sometimes that's easier for organization, stuff like that. And definitely check your own biases. And I think that bias is a word that gets tossed around a lot, but it can mean a pretty broad thing. Like for example, I know that I'm more comfortable interviewing women. A lot of times I'll look at my story. I have like 5 female sources. I have not talked to any men. So just be aware of your biases and try to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And then other than that, I would just say, like, it's cheesy, but believe in yourself. Like I definitely came into the internship and I'm not kidding. I was like, wow, this is going to be hard and I'm going to be so bad at it. I did not deserve to be here. This is going to be awful. I cannot do this. And I could, and it was fine. And it wasn't like that stressful, really. I was like, how am I going to work a full day of writing? Like, I know I can write, but I write like 1 story a week or 2 for like the school newspapers. It's not the same as full time. I was like, I'm out of my element here, but I promise you that you aren't. So like, just be patient with yourself, like know that you can do more than you expect, and definitely just like seek support or like find a mentor in the newsroom. I don't really have advice for like a bigger newsroom like the Baltimore Sun, but my newsroom was pretty small, so I didn't really have to go like seeking for a mentor because I literally talked to the editor-in-chief like every day. Like he directly read my stories and critiqued them. But try to find someone in your newsroom if it's bigger that maybe like you can relate to like give you feedback on your clips, who will support you. And I mean, Tom Baden was like super supportive of me. He like submitted my work for a bunch of contests, like didn't even tell me, like just to tell you like the lengths that this man was willing to go to support me in my work. And it's not that hard to do. Like, just be friendly. Don't overthink it. Your intuition is what makes you a good journalist. And the fact that you guys were all selected for this program means that you already have that. So that would be my main advice.
Great talk. Thank you. Good advice all around. Let me ask too, what was the newsroom closed during your internship? In other words, did you work remotely?
Yes, I worked fully remote.
Okay. And does that brings its own set of challenges, I guess?
Yeah, I would say so. Sorry, someone just looked at me like they're trying to, I'm literally in the newsroom right now. Like I'm in someone's office. It's not my office. It's fine. Everything's fine. Anyways, what I was saying, yeah, I would say it does bring its own challenges because definitely like time management and there's no one to talk to. Like it's like minor advice, but get up and like take a lap. Like don't just sit at your computer all day. Like take a walk, have a snack, like go talk to a person. Don't just be at the computer all day. You'll get frustrated.
Good real world advice. Okay, thank you. All right, Lindsay, you're up.
Great. Yeah, thank you guys. You guys kind of like went over a lot of already really important advice, but I guess something that I would highlight, especially when it comes to the fact that a lot of your guys' internships are going to be like partially or completely remote, is just like, don't be afraid to ask questions and like understand that the people that you work with are busy, but at the same time, they want to help you succeed. So if you are unsure about something, it's really better to just try and get clarity on it before like kind of going your own way with things, because that could lead to kind of mistakes and problems in the long run. So yes, definitely don't be afraid to reach out to people in terms of that, but then also in terms of like making connections, obviously. And it's cliche and it's harder when it comes to a remote internship, but definitely don't be afraid. For example, if there's like a reporter who has a beat that you're really interested in or covers a certain beat that you're really interested in, definitely don't be afraid to send them a text or an email and ask if you could like ask them some questions about how they kind of go about their stories and just how they got to the point that they are in their career. That can be really valuable, is like getting that kind of advice and mentorship from the other people in your newsroom. And another thing that I would also recommend is, since Delaware Online is a Gannett paper, so it's owned by Gannett, it has a lot of like kind of sister publications. They like put on all of these, and this might not be applicable to everyone, but they put on a lot of like interesting panels and like webinars and things like that. And I didn't go to every single one of them, but the ones that I did have time for, I like learned a lot of kind of valuable info. And they like covered everything from like like there was a special one on like audience focused journalism that I thought was particularly interesting. So just like for, if you see kind of a panel or just something that you have the opportunity to go to as a webinar, I would really recommend that. I especially think it's great, like for all that like COVID has caused problems for us as journalists, one thing it has done is like made these kinds of conferences and webinars more accessible because they're online. A lot of the times they've eliminated expensive fees, or like if you're a student, you can get discounts on things. So I just totally recommend that. And then I guess one last kind of piece of practical advice is kind of maybe go in with an idea of or like certain goals that you might want to accomplish by the end of the summer, and then work with your editors and your mentors to achieve them. So for example, going into Delaware, my internship at Delaware Online last summer, I didn't have any experience with video production. And one goal that I had for the summer is I really wanted to get a little bit of experience with that. And through working with my editor, I was able to independently like shoot and edit and produce a video that was like a complement to one of my stories. And the reason I was able to do that is because I really wanted to do it, not because they told me to. And so, yes, I think just think of your experience as flexible, and that you can definitely, I mean, obviously they'll have assignments for you, but you can also go in kind of giving them ideas of what you might be interested in covering and doing as an intern at your publication this summer. And yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that I wanted to cover, and I really hope that was helpful.
It was helpful. Thanks, Lindsay, very much. And just a couple of quick things about what you said. It's especially important, I think, to share your goals with your editors, because you might have the best editor in the world, but she's not necessarily a mind reader, probably not. So she's not going to know what you really want to work on. I really want to learn. I'd love to have a part of an investigative assignment or something, work with one of your people who's really experienced in that. Or I really want to learn video, or I really want to do this and do that. They'll help you do that. But again, those might not normally come up in the course of doing business, but if they know that's what you want to work on, they will probably help make that happen. And your other point was especially interesting about webinars. And during the pandemic, so much stuff was offered in that format. And even, I mean, places like the National Press Club would have a discussion on writing or interviewing or something like that that would normally just be open to members, and they were making it available to the general public. So do keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. And maybe it would come through your newspaper or newspaper chain, or maybe it would just be more universally offered like that. But absolutely take full advantage of that. Okay, Mike, you get the bat cleanup and pull it together and share many cosmic thoughts.
Well, my first thought is this is an impressive group. So I was really happy to hear what they got out of their internships last year, because it is very important. And some of this may be repetitive, but what I like to tell people is you have to make the most of your experience here, right? This is a learning experience. This is part of your education. You know, this is the buffer between college and learning and doing. And journalism, as you learn, is a skill you learn by doing. Right? So you want to be writing stories, you want to be taking videos, you want to be doing interviews, you want to participate in the process. So I think Lindsay was very right, and she was phenomenal at this at our site, was what hasn't she tried? What didn't she do? How do we get her? How do we get her out with the breaking news team? How do we get her out with the video team? Things like that. What don't you know that's going to be a skill you're going to need, and take advantage of the workforce that you have. There's experts in every line of this, in every newsroom, everywhere. So work on what you don't do well. Bring ideas, and a lot of you said that, bring story ideas, but take a little bit of time to curate your own idea. What is the story that you want to work on? Homelessness is not a story. Homelessness is a master's degree, is a doctorate, is a whatever. What is the story you want to tell? And do a little homework before you just, I want to write about homelessness in Wilmington. That's a job, not a story. So curate your own story idea. Talk to people about what it is you'd like to do before you kind of pitch it. And I think that gets rid of some of the nerves. Get out of your seat.
it's going to be a lot easier this year than last year. I felt bad for our interns last year who it was all by video and phone and things like that. But as we're emerging from our cocoons this year, get out of your seat. The stories are not in your seat. The stories are at homes, in the streets, in communities, in neighborhoods. That's where the stories are. Always ask yourself, what is that extra call I could make? What's that one more person I could talk to? Is there a non-interested third party I need to be talking in this thing? Because everyone seems to be either here or here. Who's going to tie together the varying points of view? I think people already said, watch your bias. It's the same thing too. It's about understand who you're writing for. That's a question you got to ask yourself when you're pitching a story is, who am I writing this for? And that's something you need to talk about as you're proposing it and as you're talking to your editor. Who is the audience that you're writing for? But really, you can't write enough, right? This is a job where, again, steal other people's writing styles, read sharp people, read really smart people. I remember the old crime reporter from the Miami Herald, whose name, now that I'm trying to say it, escapes me. Tom, do you remember her from the 80s?
Edna Buchanan.
Edna Buchanan. I used to love reading her books. And she wrote one of the greatest lead I think I ever wrote, because Miami in the 80s, the homicide rate in Miami in the 80s was insane. And there was no way for a reporter to cover the homicides in Miami. You just, she'd wake up in the morning and there'd be 15, 20 homicides overnight. There's just nothing you can do. So her job was to kind of pick one. And she wrote this fascinating story about a guy who was gunned down in a Burger King while waiting to get dinner at Burger King. And the lead she came out with was Joe Smith died hungry. And I just thought that was really just kind of this fascinating intro. But it was a person that I loved watching when I was young, writer, loved following her. And there was a guy in Florida named Tom French, and his big line was always name of the dog, brand of the beer. Details matter in a story. And once you get those details and you do the writing, and my last kind of bit of guidance is from my first editor, who when he sat me down said, listen, when you're young in this business, writing is still a skill that you don't quite have down. So you spend a lot more time writing a story than reporting a story. But as you get better at writing and as you practice it and as you do writing, you're a little quicker at that and you're spending more and more time doing reporting. And when you do more reporting, your stories get better. And when your stories get better, they're easier to write. And he would just walk through that by the time you're in this business for 4 or 5 years, then the ratio is switched from 20 to 80 to 80 to 20. You're spending 80% of your time reporting and 20% of it writing. And he said, that's just because you're learning the skill. So the bottom line of that one, not to keep boring you with stories, is write. If you're sitting somewhere, you're sitting at your home, you're sitting at a desk, just find someone and say, what do you need done? Is there a story I can do? Here's a story I'd like to do. Don't waste a moment of this. Use all your time wisely. It is so valuable what you will get out of these newsrooms. That's all I got.
That's great stuff. All right. Well, we got time left for questions. Plenty of time left for questions. So, and this can be the most fun of the presentation. So let's hear from this year's interns in terms of what's on your mind and what you'd like to know. I hate it when they all talk at once like this. You just can't hear anybody. Come on now. Am I going to have to call on people?
I have another question. Is the policy on quotes the same for most papers where you can read people what they said, but you can't show them the article once it's written and like before it's published?
So I could have a really, really long discussion with you about quotes and stories, and the biggest story killers and the biggest read killers in people's stories are quotes. My first thing is quotes have to do 2 things in a story before I actually answer your question directly, because it's a pet peeve of mine. Quotes have to do 2 things in a story or you don't use them. One, it has to move the story forward. It has to be a good transition that moves the story forward. Forget things you might have learned in school that you have to have a quote by the 3rd paragraph or something like that. That's no. If it doesn't move the story forward, or it says something better than you can say, right? If it doesn't meet one of those two criteria, limit how many quotes used, not using quotes from press releases, not using canned stuff, things like that. But the reality is, yes, you're interviewing a person. If you want to check facts with somebody, if you want to say, hey, you said blah, 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 I just wanted to check some of these, that's okay. But everyone's going to revise, revisit. They're going to want to change what they said. They're going to want to tweak it. And you've not caught them, but you've captured a moment and you want to reflect that moment. So yeah, I would not be repeating quotes back to people. And use them sparingly.
Thank you.
How you doing? So I know you guys say we got to get up and get in the field and interview. Are we going by ourselves, or we always have to have somebody chaperone us as we go out in the field and get like a story or something?
Well, I can answer that one again if somebody else wants to jump in, but I think that's a twofold experience. I think because I know you're going to become working for us, and we have a lot to talk about the Sixers, and we'll see how they do. But listen, we want you to understand and learn the experience. So we will probably have you work with somebody, right? Kind of see what it is. They'll teach you the tricks of the trades. But by the time the summer's over, or midway through, or a quarter of the way through, it depends on how we feel, how you're doing. You're going to be out there on your own. But we're not going to do that. And I don't necessarily speak for everybody, but I assume we're not going to do that to you day one. We're going to have you team up with somebody else and just kind of see where your comfort levels up, your skill levels, and we'll go from there.
I came into my first day at the Baltimore Sun and was asked for pitches immediately. Again, I was an opinion, so it is slightly different. But I was like pretty much on my own. We had a morning meeting, and then I was left to my own devices to get it done. So I think it does vary across the board, but you guys all seem like pretty independent people, and people want to see initiative. So if you're ready to take initiative, as we keep talking about pitching and everything, like you should be ready with knowledge and preferably a story idea. I think I always come into any like journalism related interview with like some idea of some initiative that I'd like to take. So.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, when I was at the Daily Record, I didn't have to pitch immediately, but the first day I came in and I did a story about community colleges and how they were expecting to see more enrollment with the pandemic as people were like afraid to go back to their four-year colleges. But so I got that story assigned to me, and then my editor gave me a few ideas of places to start with sources, but that was it. It was like, here's 2 people you can check out. Goodbye. Figure the rest out on your own. And because that was a bit of a longer story, he's like, it's your first day. We don't need this immediately. You can like start on this and like get it to me by tomorrow. And so I probably like had talked to like 4 community colleges, and he was like, you know what, let's try and get 6. You don't have to turn it in today. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But like with Indie Week, like we had our weekly edit meeting yesterday, and that was the first thing I did. They were talking about what to put in the print edition. They were like, do you have any ideas, Ellie? And I had to be like ready to go. I mean, it's not like I had a story in the pocket ready to pull out, but I was kind of like, it's getting hot this summer. What if we do something about heat islands, and that was enough. I mean, that's not the most brilliant idea to ever come out of my mouth, but they were like, oh, that's pretty good. So it doesn't have to be like super full form. Just like, it can even be like, I think we should write a story about this general topic, like just something to bring to the table.
Okay, I see we have some hands up now. Maria.
Hello. Everyone's sort of talking about pitching, so I'm sure it'll kind of like vary between like publication to publication, but I'm sort of like curious about that process. Like I've only written for like my student newspaper, and usually we give them maybe like a couple sentences of background on a story and maybe like 2 to 3 sources that we would reach out to. But I was sort of curious, like in the newsroom, like how much information do you need to give your editor about a story, like when you pitch it?
I tried to do as much research as I possibly could before pitching. I think that always shows that you like know more of what you're talking about. If you already know like quite a bit of background, great. But I know that I was editor-in-chief of the UMBC newspaper. And when people were coming to us as well, we'd like to hear like a few sources that they think we could talk to, something that's fully fleshed out, that like as the easier you can make your editor's job, the better. So the more research you do, having a couple sources to talk to, for me, it was like looking at databases that I could be pulling from for research for an editorial. My pitches did not get accepted unless they were like pretty fleshed out. I think that, yeah, like the more research you do, the better, which I think is like a good thing to take away from just this whole panel as a whole, you know?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the publication. Like at my student publication, I was a senior writer. So that was like a pitch only writer by my sophomore year, like doing longer form stories. And that was quite detailed. They were like, we want you to come in with a document saying like what question you're trying to answer, some sources you're going to reach out to, why do we care, why is this relevant? Whereas like at the Daily Record, what I ended up doing is, I mean, and this is not as full-fleshed as the way Anjali seemed to go about things, but that would probably be a better idea. I had a list of a few vague ideas, and I kind of like pitched a few at once in the event that multiple of them would fall flat, which is what happened. And my boss was like, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I do like that one. So I had a few kind of like half-baked ideas, but each of them, when I say half-baked, I mean like I didn't have like all my sources ready to go, but I at least knew like why the story was relevant. I think that's a really important question to ask yourself in journalism. Like if you enjoy blunt humor or like blunt method of speaking, think to yourself, okay, like why would anybody care about reading this? Like if you can't answer that question, then you probably shouldn't pitch it. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean like any story, and it can be so simple as like, oh, like people like, you know, like conflict or like emotion or like people like this happened recently. It can be very, very basic, but just something to like make your editor be like, oh, like this is relevant. Like a friend of mine is a mushroom scientist, and he was like, pitch a story about mushrooms. It's like, well, why would anybody care to read about that? But how is that relevant? You know, like that's not relevant at all. That's just an example, first one that came to my mind, but it should have some element of relevance. And you can also just ask your editor, like, what's the like pitching process here? Like, would you like me to come to you with something more formal, or just kind of spit out ideas? And I think asking, like, the more questions, the better. Like, and people who laugh at you for asking questions, like, I don't know, like that's literally the job, is asking questions. So they probably won't do that.
So Mike, let's get your voice in here as the professional editor on the receiving end. What do you look for in a pitch? What's going to be most effective? What are your expectations?
Well, it's kind of a mix of everything, because you don't want too much of a conclusion on a story idea if we haven't been out reporting anything yet. So be careful that you're coming in with a conclusion rather than a premise or an idea of something. And I think you want to develop a relationship with your editor who, you know, you'll be working with, of like a two-way street. Because remember, your editor is going to be the first reader of this story. So the initial questions they're going to have are probably going to be the same questions that any reader is going to have. So it's really about discussing your story and your thoughts with your editor, letting them throw some questions at you to help guide where we might be going with the story. But the idea too of, and I can't remember who mentioned it, but you know, again, it goes back to who are we writing the story for? Have that in mind when you're putting it together. You know, and is this a story or is this just a fact? And I think we have to understand that storytelling is an art. Reciting facts is just, you know, stenography. And what do we want to, are we telling a story? And to be honest, the human element tells a story. So anything that we're going to be putting together really has to reflect on people, the impact on people, who's being impacted by whatever it is. That's who we're starting the story with. So just understand that when we're doing it, it's got to have that element that it's got to impact somebody.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I see a couple more hands up. Kayla?
Hi, yes. A lot of people mentioned how they kind of had stories or ideas or goals that they wanted to accomplish before the end of their internship. And I think Lindsay may have mentioned video. And I want to also do more video because I don't do video stories. I've done other types of video. And I was just wondering how that was conducted through your internship, if you were able to kind of shadow someone, or if someone was there to help you like edit, or if you were actually in the editing room. And I just wanted more information on that.
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. So the way that, at least in this case, the video was kind of a complement to this story. So what I did is I first interviewed this person just over the phone, regular, and then I asked if I could come in and film a video segment of him just talking about kind of the same topic. And what it was about how in the fall, the University of Delaware wasn't inviting a lot of students back on campus, and how the businesses on Delaware's or Newark's Main Street were affected by that, and how they were like likely to lose business because there weren't going to be many people around and things were going to be largely virtual. So I just kind of had the story as a kind of extra complement to the written story, with a little bit of like context, along with some B-roll footage of Newark, and then kind of interspersed with clips from this interview that I conducted over video. And yeah, basically the way that it worked is I worked with the Delaware Online's video journalist, Jenna, and we did it virtually. So she just kind of showed me how to use the editing software that Delaware Online uses, which is called Watch It. And again, this is going to probably differ for between different publications, but it's like a pretty simple video editing software. And it's like it's not like, it's based like on a web browser. It's not like the way that like iMovie is, where it's like software that you've downloaded onto your actual machine, if that makes sense. And so I was shown how to use it. And then it's like, if you have a little bit of editing experience, which you said that you did, I think like a lot of other kinds are going to kind of come intuitively. So I'd already had a little bit of experience with Adobe Premiere Pro and with like iMovie. So using Watch It kind of came relatively intuitively. And I was just able, that was like one of the times that I got to go in the newsroom, was to pick up like the little tripod that would hold my phone and the microphone that like clipped to the person I was interviewing, who was a restaurant owner. And so I did that completely just on my own. I went up there and kind of set that up. And I kind of had to like figure that out by myself, how to set up the tripod, but it was okay. And so, yeah, that's how that worked in my case. And I would say in your case, you should definitely feel confident, considering you've already done some like video editing and video production. And yeah, that's was my experience with it.
Okay, thank you. Johnny, what's up, man?
Hi. So I think I just have like a general question. I think we're all pretty excited on starting our internship very soon. I know I am. And but at the same time, with excitement, there's also nervousness. And because really you don't really know what to expect for the first 2 weeks or first week of your internship. So to previous interns, what were something that surprised you, or like what advice could you give us to move forward and to not feel anxious starting this new job or internship?
I mentioned the coffee train briefly. I also would suggest that you try and get to know other interns within your like program, which is difficult, but I was able to do that at the Baltimore Sun. I made friends with one of the other interns pretty quickly, and we would Zoom in the middle of the day and just discuss what we were working on, even though she was in the audience engagement department. It sort of gave me this like bigger understanding of the organization of the paper. So I would suggest like don't be shy. I guess it's difficult and it's kind of uncomfortable virtually. I think if you're in the newsroom, you could just walk by someone's desk and be like, hey, but reaching out to people that you admire and asking them to get to know them as on a personal level can be really nice and kind of comforting, especially I'm a huge extrovert. And so I got very anxious, and then when I get anxious, I talk a lot, but it's nice to listen to people, listen to how they came into their positions. Some of the people at the Baltimore Sun who I met were interns at one time. So I asked them directly about how they got to where they are. And hearing other people's stories, I think, obviously we're all journalists, so hearing other people's stories can often be comforting, I think. Like you understanding that you were chosen for this position for a reason. And I think it was Ellie who said, like, believe in yourself. Like, that is really good advice. Like, you are capable, and don't let imposter syndrome like get you down.
Yeah, I would just add to that to say, yeah, you kind of iterated this, Anjali, but like you were chosen for this internship because like the panel saw like the potential in you, and you already have some good experience under your belt, and you interviewed with them and everything, and they saw the potential that you have to do really well at this internship. And obviously not everyone gets selected for it. So you should definitely feel proud of yourself for being selected, and kind of use that as an indication that you have the ability to succeed. And then one last thing that I would also say is keeping in mind that like an internship isn't just a regular job. Like, it's kind of a specifically kind of designed to be a learning and growing experience for you that's mutually beneficial to both you as a young journalist and also the paper who's able to kind of, or the publication you're working with that's able to kind of cultivate this new talent through you. So just keep in mind that the editors and the people that you're going to be working with are there to help you succeed, and they want to see you succeed, but they also know that as a student or as a recent graduate, you're not about to have the same experience of just starting a new job as a reporter and being expected to just kind of know a lot from, but rather that they will kind of help you learn the skills that you need to succeed into the longer term.
And I guess in terms of just reducing anxiety, like I feel like that is one of those things where it probably will not go away until you just like start the job, and then it will go away pretty fast. Like I remember literally like the first day being terrified, and then after the first week, like every time my boss would be like, wow, like good job, you turned that in fast, like this is good. And I was like, you mean it's not garbage? I was like, it's wonderful, great job. And then I was like, oh, I could chill a little bit. And then the other advice I would give is just like, this might be curveball advice, like don't live, eat, breathe, sleep, die journalism. Like when you're on the clock, like do the work and like think about it, but like don't just work and then like go to sleep and eat. Like whatever it is that you like to do, like play music, play sports, you know, like read a book, whatever, like make sure you carve out a little bit of time in your day to do that. Because I found that like really helped me having structure, especially working at home. Like every morning I would wake up an hour before work and I would like have my coffee and read my book outside on the back porch. And then it was like, oh, like I took a moment for myself and I'm like ready to start the day. And like I had a lunch half-hour break or whatever, and I would eat my lunch and I would like watch a little Netflix. Like I would get up and move. So just like you don't need to like absolutely exert yourself to death to do a good job at this. The fact that you were chosen means that you have the capacity to do a good job at this and also maintain your sanity.
Great collection of very practical and helpful advice. We're running out of time, but I see one more hand up. So Clara, go for it.
Yeah, so actually my question was sort of related to what Ellie just said. You know, like this isn't like a regular job like in retail or something where you're there from 9 to 5 and then after you leave, you know, you're done for the day. Like obviously there's still some work to be done after you leave the newsroom. So I was just curious, how much time did you guys sort of like dedicate, or do you dedicate like outside of the newsroom to your work? And also how do you just balance sort of like your work and then like Ellie said, your sanity and like, you know, doing things for yourself?
I was actually working at the UBC newspaper in the evenings. So I never really got out of journalism brain, which can be helpful because you stay really, I don't know, in touch with everything. But I would say like in the morning, I turned on NPR just to like get my break, even before I was working, this all might be like contradicting what Ellie said. And I think that Ellie gave great advice. I am incapable of taking it, but I do think like giving yourself a break in the evening is a really good idea, because I ended up leaving the internship like kind of burnt out. And you want to avoid that because you'll be going into either your next semester or your next, I don't know, adventure or whatever you're doing. But I found it very helpful to turn on the news in the morning, like I listen to Up First, the NPR podcast, in the morning before I do anything, just to like sort of get your brain in tune, even if you're having coffee or even if you're only half listening. And then afterwards, like taking some time to ask yourself, like, what did I do today? Like, did I accomplish the things that I wanted to do this morning? If not, like organizing your brain. Like I make a lot of lists. So organizing yourself into like what you wanted to accomplish, what you can do tomorrow. And then on the weekend, I would say really like compartmentalize and like obviously pay attention to the news every day, but like you're not on the clock. So try your best to do other things for yourself. Otherwise you will be burnt out, and that is not a fun experience.
Yeah, I'm a big work balance gal just because like I'm prone to burnout and anxiety. So I do not overexert myself. But like if you're someone who like, I don't know, I feel like it's pretty common among young journalists, like people push themselves like really, really hard. Like I would say just like start small. Like think about, like for me, I stopped using social media a lot. Like I'll delete my Instagram like all the time. You'd be surprised how much time a day, like you think you don't have time, but you'll spend doing completely random stuff. And like you do have like a half hour or an hour in there to like dedicate to something that's good for yourself. So I would like schedule in that time. I would be like 12 to 1, I'm going on a walk. And that was like sacred walk time. I like treated it as if it were like work. I was like, no, I can't do anything with my friends right now because I'm going on my walk. So like hold yourself to your commitments to yourself just as you would to your job. And like I said, start small. Like if you don't have time to like spend a lot of time relaxing, even if it's just like 10 minutes, it's like for these 10 minutes, I'm only going to do like what I want to do. And I think that that's pretty helpful. And in terms of like how much journalism I do off the clock, like in my experience, like, I mean, I was doing a few like other freelance things on the side. Like I had like a communications gig. It was doing like 1 or 2 stories a month. But other than that, did not do much journalism off the clock, minus like walking down the street and being like, oh, that's weird. All right, sorry about that. Like I wasn't doing much research, I guess.
Okay, well, this has been a terrific discussion. It's hard to bring it to an end, but we are at the point where we need to do that. And I will warn you all, the last thing that Ellie mentioned, I don't know what you call that, journalist syndrome or whatever, but that will probably stay with you, because I still walk down the street, even though I'm retired now, and think, well, gee, that would be a good story. I wonder why that happened, or why is that building blue, or whatever it is. So that will, but the key is not to go down all those rat holes at once. Be selective, be selective.
Right.
So thanks so much for our panel, and thanks for the great questions. And I see that people have been, panelists have been offering their phone numbers to you and inviting you to follow up with them at any point, including during the internship. So please do that. Thanks, Mike, for joining us, and thanks for your wisdom. And we're about ready to go to the next group. Rebecca, are you around?
I am here, so I guess we'll do our official handoff. So thank you, panelists and Mike, really appreciate that. And this officially ends the MDDC side of our time. And so I'm going to turn it over to Larry Nagengast. I have made him a co-host, so he's set. And I think if so those who want to stay certainly can, and I know the Delaware Community Foundation interns are required to be here for the next couple hours. And
if
Larry,
you're DCF, don't move.
Yep. So you want to tell the group what happens next?
Okay. All right. Let's take a couple of minutes to gather ourselves, and as soon as I give you the basic context here. I have Patricia Rivera and Jose Simalo, and who are both experts on Sussex County, Delaware. And the two of them will talk about the demographics of the Sussex County Hispanic Latino population. And since you are going to be spending a good deal of your time in Sussex County and writing about the Latino population in the county, this is going to be your orientation, as it were, and your opportunity to, at least in a informational sense, get your feet on the ground. And then after they're finished with their presentation, I'll talk a little bit more as well about how we're going to pull our project together. And so there you go. Let's take a couple-minute break because I think everybody probably could use that. And then we'll jump right in with Patricia and Jose.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. So come back at 1:10. Is that the plan?
That's good. That's good. Yes.
All right. See y'all then.